Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. I'm excited to get started with our first slide. Today, we'll be exploring Mega Goal 1.1, which is part of Unit 2, all about careers. We'll look into the form, meaning, and function of careers and how they shape our lives. Over the next few slides, I'll guide you through key concepts and insights that will help you better understand this important topic. So, let's dive in and explore what careers truly mean for us. Today, I will walk you through the lesson objectives for this session. First, we will learn the rules for doing the exercises, which is essential to understand how to apply what we learn effectively. Next, we'll focus on applying the past progressive tense, especially when we use the word while to describe ongoing actions happening at the same time. We'll also cover how to use relative pronouns correctly and understand their specific functions within sentences. Additionally, we'll distinguish between the simple present tense in affirmative, negative, and question forms, so you can use it confidently in different contexts. These objectives are designed to help you build a solid foundation in grammar and improve your overall language skills, connecting everything to the broader theme of effective communication. All right, let's get started with a quick warm-up. Now I want you to choose the correct answer for each sentence. First, we have they football. The options are plays, play, or played. Think about whether we're talking about something they do regularly or in the past. The correct answer here is play because it's present tense and matches the subject, they. Next, we have Nora in the school. The options are working, work, or works. Since we're talking about Nora, who is singular, the correct choice is works. It's important to remember how subject-verb agreement works. Singular subjects take verbs with an S at the end in the present tense. This activity helps us practice choosing the right form of the verb based on the subject and tense, which is crucial as we build our understanding of English grammar. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Now let's look at the structure of the present simple tense. On this slide, you'll see some examples to help clarify how it works. For instance, we have we study English, which is a simple statement showing an action we do regularly. Then there's I go to school by car, highlighting a habitual action. And I clean my room is another example of a routine activity. Notice that when we use the base form of the verb like study, go, and clean, we often add an ending for third-person singular subjects. For he, she, or it, we change the verb slightly. For example, he studies English. He goes to school by car, and he cleans his room. Here, you'll see the added s, e's, or y's. The key point is that with subjects like I, you, we, and they, we simply use the base form of the verb. But with singular third-person subjects, he, she, it, we add an ending to the verb. This structure is fundamental because it helps us express routines, facts, and general truths in a clear, consistent way. Remember, the form of the verb changes depending on the subject, which is an essential part of mastering the present simple tense. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. So let's look at some important questions we often ask in English. First, what do you study? This question helps us understand what someone is learning or their main area of focus. When we answer, we use the base form of the verb, like study, and add do or does depending on the subject. Next, where does he travel? This question asks about the location or places someone goes to. Again, we use the base form of the verb, travel, and add does because the subject is he. This form, question word, subject, do or does, and the base verb is really useful. It helps us form questions clearly and correctly in English. It's part of what makes the language so precise and effective for communication. Remember, mastering these question structures is key to improving your speaking and understanding skills. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Let's look at this next example. We have the sentence, he had lunch noon, and the question is which preposition fits best here. Is it at, on, or in? The key point to remember is that we use at when talking about specific times of the day. So in this case, at noon is the correct choice. It helps specify the exact time when the action took place. This example highlights an important concept. Choosing the right preposition depends on the context, especially when indicating time. Understanding these nuances is essential for clear and accurate communication. So, whenever you're referring to a specific point in time, think at. It's usually the best fit. Let's look at this example. They play chess Sunday. Now, the key here is choosing the correct preposition. We have three options: on, in, and at. When talking about days and specifying a particular day, we usually use on. So, in this case, the correct preposition is on. It would be they play chess on Sunday. Remember, on is used for days and specific dates. This example helps us understand how prepositions connect actions to specific times in a clear and natural way. It's a simple rule, but very important for accurate communication. Now, let's look at this sentence. She goes shopping the morning. The key here is understanding which preposition fits best in this context. We have three options: in, on, and at. First, in the morning is the correct choice. It's a common phrase used to describe activities happening during the morning hours. When we say, she goes shopping in the morning, it clearly indicates that her shopping trip occurs at some point during that time frame. Next, the other options, on the morning and at the morning, are not correct in this context. On is typically used with days and dates, like on Monday or on New Year's Day. At is generally used for specific points in time, like at 9 a.m. or at noon, but not for general parts of the day. So the most appropriate preposition here is in, because it helps specify that her shopping happens during the morning period. Remember, choosing the right preposition is crucial because it clarifies the timing and helps your audience understand exactly when something takes place. This example ties into our overall theme of mastering prepositions, which are small words but incredibly important for clear and accurate communication. All right, now let's look at this slide. We have three prepositions, on, in, and at. The task is to click on the right preposition to complete the sentence. So the sentence is, they visited the zoo the weekend. Now, thinking about this, which preposition fits best here? In English, when talking about weekends or specific periods of time like that, the correct preposition is at. So, the full sentence would be, they visited the zoo at the weekend. This example highlights how prepositions are crucial for conveying time and place accurately. Remember, choosing the right preposition helps your sentences make sense and sound natural. So, in summary, for this sentence, click on at because it correctly indicates the time frame of the visit. This is a small detail, but it makes a big difference in clarity and correctness. Now let's look at this sentence. They visited the zoo the weekend. The key here is choosing the correct preposition to complete the sentence naturally. We have three options, on, in, and at. In this context, when we talk about days like the weekend, the most appropriate preposition is on. So, the correct sentence is, they visited the zoo on the weekend. Using on with days or specific parts of the day is a common pattern in English, and it helps clarify exactly when something happened. Remember, selecting the right preposition is essential for clear communication and for maintaining natural-sounding sentences. So always think about the context. Here, the weekend, and choose on to connect the event with the time frame properly. Let's take a closer look at this slide. The words here, on, flies, in, on, works, writes, work, do, at, drives, do, writes, does, might seem a bit random at first glance. But what we're really exploring is how different words and their forms relate to actions and functions. Notice how some words like works, writes, and does are verbs indicating actions. Others like on, in, and at are prepositions showing relationships or locations. The repetition of work and do emphasizes the importance of understanding different forms of the same base verb. This slide underscores a key point. In language, context really matters. The same root word can take on different roles depending on how it's used. For example, work can be a noun or a verb, and do can be an auxiliary or an action. Recognizing these variations helps us communicate more effectively. Throughout this presentation, we've been focusing on how verb forms and prepositions shape meaning. This slide is a visual reminder that mastering these small but essential differences enhances our overall language skills. So, keep in mind that understanding these nuances is crucial for clear and accurate communication. Today, I want to talk about the different ways we refer to both people and things in our sentences. When we talk about both people and things, we often use words like both, people, and things to make that clear. Specifically, things can include animals and objects, while people refers to persons. These are broad categories that help us specify what we're talking about. Now, when we're connecting these ideas to other parts of our sentences, we use words like who, that, and which. Each of these has its own role. For example, who is used when we're talking about people. That can refer to both people and things, and it's often used in defining or essential clauses, things that are necessary to identify the noun. Which is usually used for additional information about things, often in non-essential clauses, meaning it provides extra detail but isn't necessary for the main point. Understanding these distinctions is key because it helps us make our sentences clearer and more precise. This connects to our overall theme of effective communication. By choosing the right words, we can convey exactly what we mean, whether we're discussing people, animals, or objects. Now let's look at some examples to understand how we use these relative pronouns. First, we have the sentence, "This is the girl called the police." Here, if we want to add more information about the girl, we can use the word who or whose. For example, "This is the girl who called the police," or "This is the girl whose actions called the police." Both options help us connect additional details smoothly. Next, we have the sentence, "This is the bank was robbed yesterday." To add more information about the bank, we can use which. So it becomes, "This is the bank which was robbed yesterday." This use of which is very common when giving extra details about a thing or place. The key point here is understanding how who, whose, and which help us combine sentences and add descriptive information. Remember, who refers to people, whose shows possession, and which is used for things or places. Using these correctly makes our language more precise and our stories more connected, which is essential for clear communication in any context. Now let's look at some important relative pronouns, who, whose, and which. These words help us connect ideas and add details to our sentences. For example, "The man who stands next door works in the post office." Here, who introduces more information about the man. Next, we have whose, which shows possession. For instance, "The girl whose bike is parked outside is my neighbor." It tells us that the bike belongs to the girl. Lastly, which is used to add extra details about objects or things. For example, "I found a book which explains the topic clearly." Understanding how to use these words correctly helps us make our sentences more precise and engaging, and it ties into the overall theme of how we communicate clearly and effectively. Now let's look at some important relative pronouns, who, whose, which, and who again. These words help us connect parts of sentences and give more information about a noun. For example, in the sentence, "The old man who is driving the red lorry is my granddad." The word who introduces extra information about the old man. It's like saying, "Here's more about him." Notice how who helps us specify which old man we're talking about. These pronouns are key to making our sentences clearer and more detailed, especially when describing people or things. So, understanding how and when to use who, whose, and which will really improve your writing and speaking, helping you connect ideas smoothly and naturally. This concept ties into our overall theme of making our communication more precise and engaging. Today, I want to focus on some important words that help us connect ideas and describe relationships more clearly. These words are that, who, whose, and again, that. Each of these plays a key role in constructing sentences that give us more detail. For example, when I say, "This is the book that I borrow from the library," I'm using that to introduce a relative clause. It helps specify which book I'm talking about, giving more information. Similarly, who is used when referring to people. For instance, "The author who wrote this book is very famous." It connects the person to the action or characteristic. Whose shows possession. Like in, the author whose book I borrowed is very famous. It indicates that the book belongs to the author. And again, that can be used in different contexts, often interchangeably with which, but it's generally more common in defining relative clauses, those that are essential to the meaning of the sentence. Overall, these words are crucial because they help us create more detailed and precise sentences, which is essential for clear communication. They also tie into our broader theme of improving our language skills to express ideas more effectively. That's a great question. When we talk about the key points here, it's really about understanding the importance of clarity in our communication. That means making sure our message is easily understood and not lost in complexity. That also involves being precise with our language, so we're not leaving room for misinterpretation. Who we communicate with matters as well. Tailoring our message to our audience ensures it resonates and is impactful. Who we choose to engage with can influence the success of our initiatives, so building strong relationships is crucial. That's why understanding these dynamics helps us craft better strategies and connect more effectively. Who we collaborate with, again, plays a vital role in achieving our goals, emphasizing the need to choose partners wisely. All these points tie back to our overall theme. Effective communication and relationship building are foundational to success. Now, let's look at this example to clarify the concept. Ali was studying, which shows he's engaged in a focused activity. Meanwhile, his friends were playing, highlighting a different activity happening at the same time. This contrast helps us understand how two actions can occur simultaneously but involve different subjects. Another example is, while he was working at a hospital, I was sleeping. Here, the key point is the use of while to connect two ongoing actions happening at the same time but performed by different people. This usage emphasizes the idea of concurrent activities. These examples illustrate how, while functions to link two actions happening simultaneously, which is a central theme in understanding complex sentence structures. Recognizing these patterns helps us describe situations more clearly and effectively in both spoken and written language. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Now, let's look at some examples of people doing different activities while they are engaged in conversation or other tasks. For instance, the people on this slide are waiting for a bus, and they are talking to each other. This shows how people often socialize or communicate even when they're in transit. Next, we see Fatima. She's talking on her cell phone while she's shopping. This highlights how multitasking has become common. She's combining a personal activity like shopping with a phone conversation. Then we have Faisal. He's listening to football on his device while he's studying. This is a perfect example of how people often combine leisure activities with work or study, which can be both a distraction and a way to make use of downtime. All these examples tie into the overall theme of how people often juggle multiple activities at the same time. It emphasizes the importance of understanding context and behavior in communication, especially in our busy, multitasking world. All right, for your homework, I want you to focus on the workbook exercise on page 97. This is a great opportunity to reinforce what we've learned today and ensure you understand the key concepts. Take your time with the exercise. Really think about how the ideas connect to the overall theme we've discussed. Remember, practicing these exercises helps solidify your understanding and makes the concepts stick. So, when you're working through page 97, try to be thorough and reflective. Don't rush. This is about mastering the material. I look forward to seeing your progress next time.